You want to buy a furniture store. Find a building. Fill it with sofas. Watch the money come in. Simple business. People always need furniture. Here is the problem. There are roughly 100,000 furniture retail locations in the United States. One company operates 58 of them. Its average American store does $169 million a year. The average American furniture store does $1.2 million. Same category, same customer, 140 times the output. And here's the part that should not be possible. That company does not deliver your furniture, does not assemble it, does not stock finished goods you can take home today. You drive to their store. You walk a one-way path through 300,000 square feet. You find the box yourself. You load it yourself. You strap it to your own roof. You build it on your own floor with a tool they include because they know you don't own one. The customer does all the work. The company makes all the money. That is not a coincidence. The IKEA Group, the entity that operates most IKEA stores globally, runs 482 locations across 31 countries. Fiscal year 2023 revenue, 44.3 billion euros. Operating income, 2.0 billion euros. To put that number in context, Target, one of the largest retailers in America, earned $3.0 billion in operating income in 2023, on nearly 3 times the revenue. IKEA did 2/3 of that profit on furniture that its own customers carry home and build themselves. The building is not a showroom, it is a system. The one-way path is not a quirk of the floor plan, it is the floor plan. Every room display is sequenced to build desire before price is visible. The restaurant appears exactly where decision fatigue peaks, not as hospitality, as engineering. The exit is not where you expect it. Most customers who go in for a lamp come out with a cart. The average transaction at Pottery Barn is over $300. At RH, it exceeds $1,000. IKEA wins on volume what it cannot win on ticket size. But the store is not where the margin lives. IKEA sources from approximately 1,800 suppliers across 50 countries. The network is deliberately spread so that no single supplier controls a meaningful share of IKEA's production. No supplier is large enough to control the relationship. Every one of them is replaceable. Here is how the relationship actually works. IKEA does not shop. It does not browse catalogs or sit through sales presentations. It shows up at a supplier with a blueprint, exact dimensions, material grade, finish, joinery method, target cost, and asks whether that supplier can hit the number. The supplier does not sell IKEA a product. The supplier becomes a production line for a specification IKEA already owns. When you own the specification, you own the comparison. No other retailer can stock the Billy bookcase. No price aggregator can undercut it. No competitor can source it. The moat is not the brand. The moat is not the blue and yellow. The moat is 9,500 products designed specifically for this system. Products no competitor can copy and sell under the same name. Suppliers in this arrangement work on thin margins because for most of them, IKEA represents 30%, 40%, sometimes 50% of their entire annual revenue. You do not walk away from 50% of your revenue. IKEA knows that. The volume is the leverage. The leverage sets the price. The customer builds the bookcase and thinks he got a deal. The supplier ships the order and thinks he has a steady account. Both of them are right. Neither of them is the one winning. The American furniture industry watched IKEA's numbers for 2 decades. Almost all of it tried to respond. None of it looked at the right thing. Levitt's Furniture was the largest furniture retailer in the United States. Over 120 stores. More than $1 billion in revenue at peak. When IKEA entered the US market in 1985 and started repricing what affordable furniture should cost, Levitt's did what every legacy retailer does when a structural competitor shows up. It cut prices. Deeper each year on a cost base that could not hold it. Chapter 11 in 1997. Emerged. Chapter 11 again in 2008. This time, nothing emerged. 76 stores liquidated. Gone. Levitt's read the price tag. It never looked behind it. Morty Seaman figured out what was actually happening before most people did. It still cost him everything. Seaman's Furniture was the dominant furniture chain in the northeastern United States. 40 stores. $265 million in annual revenue. Morty Seaman had built it from his father's single Brooklyn storefront into a regional institution. When IKEA pushed into his markets, he hit back. More locations, sharper prices, heavier inventory. But Siemens was running finished goods logistics, full showroom staffing, and a delivery operation simultaneously. Every dollar he cut from the price tag came straight out of a margin that had nowhere left to go. By 1991, revenue was $255.8 million, and the net loss was $12.8 million. Chapter 11. In January 1992. Long-term debt, $370 million. 15 stores closed in a single announcement. Morty Seaman had already left. In 1990, he moved to Florida and built something IKEA could not touch. Not cheaper furniture, but a different customer entirely. Coordinated room packages, delivery in a week. A buyer who wanted someone else to make the decisions. Today, that company does $2.8 billion a year. It is called Rooms to Go. His original company's name is gone. The father spent 30 years building a chain that IKEA dismantled in 5. The son got out in time to build something else. Same family. One name survives. Now put the two models side by side. A traditional furniture retailer does $50 million in sales and keeps less than $1.5 million after costs. Industry average operating margin in furniture retail runs under 3%. One bad inventory quarter wipes it. One rate spike that kills consumer credit wipes it. One competitor who opens 2 stores in the same zip code wipes it. The math is that tight across the entire sector, not just for bad operators, but for the average one. IKEA generated 2.0 billion euros in operating income on 44.3 billion euros in revenue. On furniture that customers load into their own cars, drive home on their own time, and build on their own floors. The difference is not the sofa. It is everything that happens after the sofa leaves the factory. The warehouse, the delivery truck, the assembly crew, the showroom staff. IKEA pushed as many of those costs as possible onto someone else. That is why the margins belong to different industries. Here is the part IKEA does not put in the press release. IKEA is not a Swedish company. The stores are operated by the Inca Group, owned by the Stichting Inca Foundation, a Dutch nonprofit whose stated legal purpose is to promote innovation in interior design. The IKEA brand and the concept rights that every store pays to use are owned by Inter IKEA Systems, which is controlled by the Interogo Foundation in Liechtenstein. Every IKEA store on Earth sends a royalty to a foundation in Liechtenstein for the right to call itself IKEA. Ingvar Kamprad moved the entire structure into foundations in 1982. He lived in Switzerland for decades after that. The Kamprad family has not held a conventional ownership stake in this business since before most of IKEA's current customers were born. There is no shareholder. There is no controlling family on the other side of the table. There is no one to pay a dividend to. In fiscal year 2023, the Inca Group paid 1.2 billion euros in total taxes and duties, on 44.3 billion euros in revenue. The structure is legal. No government has cracked it. The furniture is cheap because the system behind it took 5 decades to build and was structured so the profits stay inside foundations designed to serve the public good. The empire was designed to own itself. That's the whole point.